back to the Wrong Advice Podcast. I'm your host, John Pachuto, and I'm very excited to have my guest, Devan Kline, on with us today. Devan, how you doing, my friend?
What's up, John, man? Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming on. Can you give a quick introduction to the listeners to who you are?
Yeah, so my name's Devan Kline, and I was born and raised in Battle Creek, Michigan. So shout out the Midwest region. And I was, I grew up in poverty. I grew up, kind of in the gutter, I would say. And when you're on welfare and your parents are, fighting each other and your life is chaotic and you don't really know it at the time. It's kind of normal. It's everyday life. It's how you go about your day. And it wasn't until, I became, I would say, a young man before you could actually look back in retrospect and say, okay, what the hell just happened there? Right. And we can dive into anything that you want. I'm a wide open book. I'm a big proponent of sharing your story. I think everybody's got a story to share. It feels uncomfortable sharing it a lot of times because we don't think that we're, necessarily individually worthy of other people hearing that story. But I mean, listen, at Burn Boot Camp, the business that my wife and I founded back in 2012, we're thriving right now in 2023. And, our business is made on the back of people sharing their stories of how much not only Burn Boot Camp has really impacted their life, but, how that spills over and how that, they just can really close the full circle loop on their story and then share that with the world, I think is a really, really powerful thing. So, I'm an entrepreneur, born and raised entrepreneur. It's either you build a company out of desperation or ambition, I think, one of the two things. And for me,
Combination of the two.
combination of the two. If you're in desperation mode, I don't think, probably a lot of blind confidence there, in that mode, like not kind of too ignorant in a way. I'm not trying to put myself down, but too stupid in a way, too young, too inexperienced in a way to really know how hard it is to build something great. And so after I got done playing minor league baseball, we embarked on that venture, but I got the seed planted when I realized that my food stamps at school wouldn't pay for the chocolate milk. They would only pay for the white milk. And I remember distinctly, we all have these times, they're like insignificant to other people, but they're distinct times where you have this deep emotion and it almost embosses in your brain like a stamp in time. And I remember kids making fun of me at the table because I couldn't get the chocolate milk when they had it. And, that was my insignificant motivation at the time. And so I went out and started a snow removal business. I didn't even know what the word entrepreneur was, but I think out of desperation, I didn't want to be made fun of anymore. And so I think that's really what catapulted me to realize that I had a little natural talent when it comes to allocating assets, building a business, and growing something people care about.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to unpack there. You mentioned growing up in poverty, obviously, and the sticking point of the chocolate milk story, which I think is just wild. The things I remember from childhood.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Talk to me about like the challenges growing up in a lower income family, and sort of how some of those challenges inevitably led you to the entrepreneurial spirit that you've exhibited over the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah, that's definitely a great question and one I've been thinking about a lot. We all go back and we use, I believe at least that we use our memory to go back and to reconcile the past, right? Almost like a tape that you play back, say, hey, what actually went on here and how did this, become a part of my personality? And that's a really hard question to answer for anybody because at the core of that answer is just extreme self-awareness to say, what happened to me in the past and how did that make up my personality now? So I can do my best to guess. I think it's a lifelong journey of really unpacking that story. And, during those formidable years when you're 0 to 7 years old, I mean, all the science points to the fact that these are the years where your mind is molded. And those years for me, I was with my mother. They call it parental abduction, but I thought it was always like kidnapping. She just basically took me from Michigan without my dad's consent. And we went and we traveled to Mississippi, to Arizona, to California, back to Arizona, to Issaquah, Washington, back to California, and all this, before it was really my elementary years. And I think a lot of my extroverted personality came out during those times because, my mom was a night shift waitress. I don't exactly know why we moved everywhere. I just know that she was kind of a gypsy soul, right? Like she just didn't want to be in a place for too long, and when you're addicted to substances and it controls your life, well, that you don't really have much. She didn't really have much where we were. She had used all those resources, on fueling that addiction. And so when we go out and adventure the country essentially out of the back of her car, 10 or 12, I'm not sure exactly the count, different apartments and rental houses, you'll go one way or the other. You'll either become an extremely introverted person and think, why me? Nobody wants to talk to me. And, therefore it must be my fault. Or, and I think this happens naturally. I think you have a little natural extroversion or introversion. And for me, it just was this opportunity that I needed to make friends. Like I had no friends, and you go from school to school to school, you're switching it every 3 months. It's very hard, to make friends. I can really remember always being the outsider and always having to prove myself. And I think a lot of that really, formed my personality today. The fact that I want everyone to like me. And so I struggle. Like I'm very empathetic. So I struggle with hard conversations. I've really had to work hard on that. And I think that has something to do with it, but that's just one layer to probably many layers. And then you fast forward and, by the time, I'll make a long story short, by the time I was 18 years old, we had 50 plus domestic violence charges, criminal charges in our house. And most of those were domestic violence, child abuse, breaking and entering, just a wide range of different things. It was just chaos. But listen, I'm not saying any of these words because I actually would not change it for anything. I think most people that go through something the way that I've gone through it won't change it for anything unless they're using it as an excuse to not go out and, use that pain to create pleasure in their own life. But
actually, I like that a lot, actually.
Hours about all the little things that I think impacted my personality. But I think that one is probably the biggest, is that I'm willing to talk to anyone about anything, anywhere. I can make anybody feel good about being in my presence. There's never an awkward moment. And I think those formidable years ultimately were my advantage.
I love adversity. That. I mean, like you said, you could take those trials and tribulations and go one of two ways, right? You can use it as the motivation that you need to become the person that you want to be, or you could use it as an excuse and a crutch to impact the entirety of your life. And it's remarkable, in my opinion, having had a real picturesque childhood myself, to see people who have endured, the type of childhood that you have, and to come out the other side of it stronger, better, wholly formed as a human being. It's a true testament to who you are as a person. I'm curious what the process of childhood sports played, because you mentioned minor league baseball. Obviously you had some skills and some talent in baseball growing up. Was that an easy sort of opportunity for you to make friends and then, become, more ingrained in a new city, a new town, as you kind of went through elementary school and high school?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think about this a lot too. So I didn't play a lot of sports up until I moved back to Michigan. So we travel. It was the middle of fourth grade. Right before fifth grade, I moved back, and then that's when I started. The first sport I played was baseball. Took after my dad, and then I played football and basketball. And so I started playing all these sports at how old are we in 10? 9, 10 years old, something like that. Yeah, and so a lot of kids now, and I think that's a good age to start, right? It wasn't like I had things like the skate parks. I would hang out with my mom would hire babysitters who would hang out at places like that. And I'm not saying anything ill about skate parks, but there's usually that's a place for upper teens and lower 20s and 20 somethings to hang out.
Yeah, not a 9-year-old.
Not a 9-year-old probably at 8 p.m. on a Friday night. And so, So I would say that sports played the following role. When I started playing it, I realized that I had talent. It gave me confidence. It made me realize that confidence was a skill. Right? Because the more I got better, the more I practiced, the better I got. And the better I got, the more confident I got in myself. And I think sports 100% is where I get my confidence from. My dad also, for all of the things that all of our parents did that we all want to blame them for and that you want to throw them under the bus for and all the reasons. And you also have to make sure that you thank them for the great things that they did as well. And my father had his ailments, and he, was addicted to drugs, in and out of prison, addicted to alcohol. I watched him. I grew up watching him, multiple women, multiple children, and having physically abusive relationships with almost everyone in his life. And for all of those things, I thank you, right? Like for all of those things that you showed me what not to do, right? You showed me an example, and I can't just thank you for not only for what you didn't do, but I also have to thank you for what you did do, because nobody is 100% right or 100% wrong. And so the fact that he was like, D, like, you're the man, dude, like all the time, every day, like in front of sports games, like all the time, he'd always build me up. And then you put the bottle upside down, boom, complete like 180 in like the personality. And then it became all about, I've got to go out and be good at sports in order to get any love or get any admiration or get any respect, even in the four walls of my household. And I think encouragement should be free. I think that's the moral responsibility as a father, to encourage you on the behaviors that are going to turn you into a good man, and discourage you on the behaviors that are going to turn you into a bad man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or somebody that society would see as like not useful or not contributing to the world around you. And so, so confidence, to answer your question, was the first thing, then teamwork, then leadership, and I think they're all correlated, right? So as I started to get more confident, I got put into the light of like the best player. That's a gift. You can either hold that gift, or you can destroy it. You destroy it by, being a bad teammate, by pointing fingers, by pointing blame, not taking responsibility and accountability for yourself. You hold it by doing the opposite, right? And then everybody starts to become that mirror reflection of you as a leader. And so I saw that, and that was the one thing in my life I could control, right? I can control my attitude, my effort, my belief around how I showed up on the baseball field. And that was my catalyst, in order to kind of get out of the gutter, if you will.
At what age do you think that your circumstances became, in your own mind, something that you need to overcome? Was that something that you were like cognizant of in high school, even at like that 16, 17, 18-year-old age?
I was cognizant rather, that we weren't wealthy. Like that I had, in Michigan, they called them bridge cards. They were food stamps and they changed to bridge cards. We had bridge cards. My dad was in and out of jail. So there's like, that gets publicized in a small town. And so he's got this reputation. My name holds the weight of this reputation almost through osmosis, like nothing, that I did necessarily. It was just where I lived and who I was associated. So that part was really tough. The part where if you're going to go out and you're going to perform in a football game, you want it to be sunny, right? And 75. You don't want it to be snowy in Buffalo in January, right? Because there's a correlation to performance there. And so I think for me, my job was to no matter what the weather is outside, right? No matter what the current environment is like in my household, in the four walls, I've got to play the game, right? And it doesn't matter if it's sunny. It doesn't matter if it's a good day or a bad day. It matters that I can control what I can control. I could not control that environment around me on the snowy games, right? If you will, to stay with this metaphor, I had to protect the football, right?
Yeah.
And I had to make sure that, I was associating things like our lack of reputation, a good reputation, wealth in the community, as things that weren't my fault, but things that I could control. And so I went out and tackled respect with baseball, because I would get respect from that. And then I tackled poverty with starting to become an entrepreneur. 20-minute snow removal. I would go knock on doors with a clipboard, and I'd sign up people 20 minutes for $20. I'd have my two buddies. We had two neighborhoods that we were on. I'd have two of my buddies come by with shovels. 20 minutes. That snow was in the yard, out of the driveway. We got a little salt finish, you know what I mean? Like a little cherry on top. And then I would collect payment, split it three ways. I'm the salesman going around starting my own franchise when I'm 11, 12, 13 years old, because I want the chocolate milk,
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. I'm curious, like the college experience, the minor league baseball experience. Obviously, you were successful enough to make it to another level that a very small percentage of athletes make it to. Obviously, that also led to you can call it a failure, you can call it a slight hiccup in the journey, right? Obviously, you don't start something to just finish in the minor leagues. You want to become a Major League Baseball player. But tell me about how that process and that sort of journey through the minor leagues and then the ending of that baseball career impacted you or imparted in you any alterations to your psyche, to your entrepreneurial spirit, and sort of like how you felt about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I think the question that I'll go after is how, like, where did it come from and where did it leave you? The baseball came from my dad, and I watched him play in the minor leagues, and I was infatuated since I was a little kid, right? And so there's this picture of me like with like bleach blonde, puffy towhead hair, and I'm just like turning into one, perfect form, hips are good, eyes on the ball, and that was my dream. That was my goal. I've always believed that you build wealth through concentration. I always wanted to be wealthy. And because of what we've already talked about, you build wealth through concentration, protected through diversification. Warren Buffett said that. And so I wanted to go out, be that public figure, be that baseball player under the lights, making millions of dollars. This was the only path. This was the only path. I was 14 playing in the 16-year-old, in which you move back about 15 or 20 feet on the map, like the mound moves back.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved up to that division, and I was even dominating that division at the time. So at 14, I knew that I was a different player. And going back to confidence, it gave me that confidence. Well, I started seeking a college scholarship. When I would talk to people like, "Hey, what's holding me back from playing Division I baseball?" They're like, "Dude, you're a buck 45. I was as a freshman, sophomore in high school. I'm a buck 45, a buck 55, somewhere in there at like 5'10", right? Like I'm not a prospect. I'm not 6'4", right? Long and lanky." They're like, "You need to put on 25 pounds. You got to, if you want to go Division I, you've got to throw in the 90s with your with your build, and so you've got to put on weight." That's when I fell in love with fitness. I started hitting it hard right around 14 years old. I got a picture. My dad bought me a bench and put it in our basement, and I've got a picture. And I never forget. I've been using a bench every week since that day, since that week. Right. I put on 25 pounds. I taught myself nutrition. I taught myself. I would actually oftentimes go to GNC with my own money, buy weight gainer because we couldn't afford it as a family. And I would just walk around with like weight gainer shakes all the time, trying to put on this weight. Pasta, spaghetti was, one of my favorite. Just load it up and just crush food, lift heavy weights. I put on 25 pounds by the time this was in like 18 months. And I also was going through puberty at the same time too. So it wasn't like a pure, eat food, lift weight type thing.
Yeah.
But it cut my teeth in fitness. It made me love it because it made me love the art of fitness and the science and just the marriage of the two things, because it gave me an opportunity to go get that Division I scholarship, get my fastball into the 90s. The more mass behind the ball you have, the more the faster the velocity goes, right? So putting on 25 pounds put me into the 90s. Now all of a sudden I get this college scholarship that takes me out of my home, which was my goal. Like freedom to me was one of my main goals. That's why I started flipping cars on eBay as soon as I was 16. Like I wanted a car, and so I wanted a good car. So one that was reliable. I started took the snow removal business into an eBay business, and just wanted to go into college being set, right? And as soon as I entered Central Michigan, entered day one, I pull up on the campus. Remember, I don't know what entrepreneurship is. I just think I'm trying to make some money to go live my dream of playing baseball. I don't have a plan B. My job is to start a company. And so I show up on campus. I set all that stuff aside. I stopped flipping cars. I stopped trying to make money. I'm on scholarship now, right? I've got this obligation to my team. I pour it in. I get better and better and better and better. And then my third year, I end up going to play in a college summer league and was just lights out, 19 out of 19 saves. And they plucked me right out of that league and put me into the minor league system. I lasted 2 years and some change there, and learned a ton of lessons about competition at that level as well. But ended up at the end of the day, I think not being talented enough. And I quit because I could have went back and, signed with another agent, but I actually chose to hang them up, right? Like I got fired from my job. with the Giants, and then I quit because I had a standard for myself, and that was to be world class at whatever it is you do. I I wasn't going to be the Cy Young Award winner. There's just a level of talent that and body size and hand size that I didn't possess. I made it as far as my work ethic could help me possibly make it. I'm very proud of that. But also, man, it would have been so sweet to just get a little drink of tea in the big leagues.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that's a level of self awareness I don't think a lot of people possess. Whether it's your upbringing or your experiences through childhood that led you to be able to make that decision, I think it's commendable. A lot of people hang on for the wrong reasons. You see it all the time,
Well,
even
yeah,
on the
even in the
pro
minor
level.
leagues, you have these guys that they go 8, 9 years, and they know inside of their heart they're not good enough. But what they're, and you can in the abstract kind of paste this across society. We're scared of what the future might hold, right? Like if we
Hmm.
actually gave up something that's comforting and secure, we're scared of who we have to become, the gaps that we're gonna have to face in ourselves. We're scared of that self-awareness,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And I was, I think, just formed in my childhood to be able to, dude, if you're not self-aware, then all of this is on you, and that's a miserable life.
Yeah. I think you touched upon something super crucial. A lot of times we get through the merry-go-round, right? You hop on high school to college, college to first job to second job, third job, fourth job, fifth job, date the girl, marry the girl, right? You get on the merry-go-round and you never stop to ask if you wanted to get on in the first place. And being able to be self-aware, to check in with yourself and understand whether you're happy, whether you're fulfilled, whether you're doing the things you want to be doing is crucial to being happy and I think successful. You could be the best lawyer in the world, you could be the best accountant in the world, but if that's not the thing that you actually want to be doing, you want to be doing something creative or something in fitness or anything, you're not going to be happy. You're not going to live a happy existence. I learned that lesson during the pandemic when I got fired from my job. I felt like the world was ending,
Mm.
and it has been the single greatest catalyst to ever happen to me in my entire life. And it's about taking those shitty moments, those really terrible, what am I going to do with myself opportunities in your life, to like really self-assess and figure out what you want to be doing and how you're going to go about the rest of your life. And it sounds like to me, when you hit that crossroads of it's time to hang up my cleats, that you made that decision for yourself, that I'm not able to be the best of what I can be in this chosen field, and it's on to the next thing. So talk to me about when you hang up those cleats, how that transition goes into fitness, and then obviously starting the boot camp and all that you guys have been doing for the last 11, 12 years.
Definitely. So let me rewind real quick and I'll bring you right up to that point. So I meet Morgan when I'm 12, by the way. So at the
Oh,
same time
wow.
as I start becoming an entrepreneur, at the same time that, I have this first altercation, like this first physical altercation with my father, we get in a fight. It's his first child abuse charge. Like around that time right there, Morgan enters the scene. She enters my life.
Wow.
And literally, I fell in love with her right away. Like this, people are going to hear this as, my, story becomes, gets out there more. Like I have proof too. I have an 8th grade letter I wrote to her friend Erin that says I'm going to marry this woman 2 years
Wow.
after meeting her. And so, she enters the scene and she's that rock, right? Going back to, being on a bridge card, you don't have really extra money to have things like cell phones. And so Morgan's paying for my cell phone as, I don't know, 16, 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there, all the way through minor league baseball, right? And
Wow.
and so when I'm done with baseball, obviously I get fired. I'm in that moment. I'm in my hotel room. All my dreams, basically, because you don't know. Like they don't tell you. They lead you. Like rightfully so. They want to keep the morale of the team high. Blah blah blah. It's called Judgment Day, and they, you get that call into the office like this. You know what time it is, right? And they rug pull you. And I knew as soon as that happened to me that my obligation was to her, right? Like the first thought that you have is, this, what if I go backwards? It's what if I go follow in the path of my family, right? Never
Mm.
graduated college, not a single person. I need to go graduate. I didn't graduate. I got pulled early. I made sure that in my contract that they paid for my school once I was done with the minor leagues, but
Nice.
I wanted to go do that. That was really important to me. And then I wanted to make money. And so I went right away and got a sales job because I always knew that salespeople made the most money. At DirecTV, actually, slanging satellite dish service to anybody that bought a brand new TV back when plasmas were like $3,000, and like
Yeah.
high rollers with Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon keys were rolling in and buying a plasma, and I'm upselling them direct TV. So, that was my mindset right after I got released, was dwell for about 3 hours in my hotel room till my flight takes off. And what's the alternative here? Going backwards, going back to Battle Creek? No, hell no. Like, I have love for my community, don't get me wrong, but the people around me in my community would not have been good people to be around at that time in my life. And
Hmm.
so I was miserable. I was making money at DirecTV, but I was miserable. And that's what, I was working 12 hours a day doing something I absolutely hated. But that's when I realized, like, oh, this is the internet age, Devin. Like, you can literally make money doing anything. So
Hmm.
what do you love? There's a lot of people that give advice to 20-year-olds, and they're like, hey, go explore, 20 different things in your 20s. And I get the impetus behind that. It's like, yeah, you want to get experience, but there's also the other side of the coin. And I think I lean like 60-40 this way, is that you can literally make money doing anything. So what do you already love? You already know there's already a passion that you have. You got shoes on your wall behind you. You might be passionate about shoes. You can literally go make a YouTube video just unveiling shoes and talking about shoes and make $5,000 a month. It's not easy, but it's
It's
pretty,
doable.
it's doable. I mean, there's millions of people doing it, right? And so I was always I don't want to go dabble. I don't want to be a dabbler. I never want to dabble. I realized that if I just picked a vertical that I could wake up every day, I asked myself the question, if I never got paid for doing a profession, and I could do something that was enjoyable to me 80% of the time, what would that be? And fitness helped me get to the big league, or to the minor leagues. So I figured, I could help people in that regard. And so during my time with the Chippewas and the Giants, I also stayed with host families. And these host families would watch me training my butt off, eating my butt off, right? And often like refusing Lucky Charms and Fruity Pebbles and like things they would try, because they were trying to be nice hosts, right?
Hmm.
Like, no, I've got goals. And like, oh, that's interesting. I've never seen this animal that has discipline before, right? Person that can say no to sugar, like, how dare you, right? And the American problems were not the problems that I grew up with, right? Poverty, abuse, a chaotic nature pretty much everywhere we go. It was just lethargy and lack of energy, and maybe some just inherent habitual unhappiness.
Hmm.
Maybe that was it. And so I started making the correlation. We started Burn Boot Camp after Morgan got a promotion in the Kellogg's company from Naples, Florida to Charlotte. We both moved to Charlotte, and I started Burn Boot Camp in a parking lot. Nobody would give me the keys to any doors, any lease, because I'm a 24-year-old kid with no financial history. I wouldn't
Yeah.
do that either. It's probably a pretty risky situation. So we opened 5 parking lot gyms. Morgan, in the meantime, after our second one, we get married. She quits Kellogg. She joins me full time. We're now running this business together. We look down. We've got 1,000 members at 5 sublease gyms. We're like 20, late 26, 27. We're like, holy moly, like, this is insane. Like, our financial lives have already been changed. What do we have here? Like, do you want to stop now? We looked at each other like, there's no logical reason to stop now. So we flipped the 5 into brick and mortars, because now we had the financial history to do so. We ended up franchising simultaneously, flipped 3 of those gyms that we owned into a franchise company. And that's how we got our initial seed capital, rather than going into some Series A or Series B or Series C. We got our initial seed capital from ourselves, right? We sold 3 gyms, put all of that money, not just most of it, all of it, back into the business in order to become a franchise. And then once we did that, in our first 18 months of this business, we awarded, which is the equivalent to sold, 200 locations in 18 months, which was,
Wow.
99% of all companies at the time. So, and we still are growing at a very fast clip. So yeah, I'll stop there. But yeah, Morgan, but basically the punchline is this: when Morgan came on, we exploded.
Yeah. That'll lead to a happy marriage. I'll make sure to cut and clip that one for social.
There we go.
uh, That is remarkable, Devin. I mean, truly, that is the type of rags to riches story that is, I think, inherently a possibility in America, which is really great. I'm very curious how the pandemic sort of reshaped your mindset, reshaped your business, because especially for in-person gyms, it was an extremely difficult time to be an owner and an operator in that field. Talk to me about some of those instances of doubt, of scared feelings about what the prospect is of your business, of your livelihood that you guys have created over that 2 year, two and ish period of time.
Yeah, for sure. So put yourself in this scenario, right? Like just visualize with me for a moment. No one is more surprised than you are in late 2019 at how successful the organization has become. Like nobody else. Everyone's like, this is crazy. You're like, I know. I know. I cannot believe it, right? We're in world class, right? Going back to that world, unit economics, which is the creme de la creme of KPIs for franchising. World class, right? Already. We just got started. We don't have any backers yet. We're 100% owned by the people that sit around the table that love this brand, right? That pour their blood, sweat, and tears into it. We go into 2020. We're one of the most valuable companies in boutique fitness franchising in the world, even at the time. March 2023 hits. We make a decision that we have to close all 275 of our gyms. There's footage of me on the floor with like 6 of my execs in our studio, in our broadcasting studio. And I'm on the floor like, we got to do it. This is like, because nobody knows at the time, right? Nobody knows what this thing could be.
Mm-hmm.
Guys, let's just close for 2 weeks. We'll flatten the curve. We'll bounce it right back, right?
Yeah.
2 years later,
yeah,
we're still, 50 gyms closed, or whatever the number was at the time. It's arbitrary, but there's a handful of gyms closed. Still, almost 2 years later, 8 months later, all of them were still closed. And so you can imagine going from having this untouchable, like everything I'm touching is turning gold, I can't believe how successful you are, to like, oh shoot, yeah, that was a valid feeling because now it's all gone.
Mm-hmm.
There's no smoke and mirrors, all gone. Like there was no gyms open, right?
Yeah.
And then you get vilified as being a hotspot with bars, which we're like, yo, I can understand some of it, right? But like,
yeah,
the population that's going to the gym is not the population that's going to the bars. You've got to have a nuanced conversation here, right? There's got to be deeper layers to your validation criteria, because I feel like it's not the same. Is it really the same? And so
not so much.
Not so much. And then yet there's like other things like medical marijuana and marijuana shops and dispensaries that are critical to stay open. And I get a sliver of that, and I understand why. But like gyms, okay. So we're like, dude, this might be over. Okay. That lasted maybe 2 days for Morgan and I. That's about the longest refractory period we've had on a negative emotion in a long time. When you come from pain, like I come from pain, things just don't get to you that easily.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You just have a thicker skin. That's where the advantage to the adversity comes in. Right? That's where the power to the poverty comes in. My skin is just thicker than most people's. Right? I've got contemporaries that might be 20, 30 years my senior who can't deal with some of the things emotionally that I can deal with. Maybe they've got experience and an IQ, right? Like I'm not a dummy, but I'm also not a rocket scientist, right? I'm somewhere in the average range. But EQ is something you can learn, and my EQ is super heightened. Why? Because I had to make friends from 0 to 7, right? And I think all that stuff kind of in a perfect storm came together and allowed me, going back to a comment you made earlier, allowed me to go into the gym and at my house, we call it the lab, where we kind of cook all of our exercises. And I worked out by myself, blaring obnoxious rap music and trying to just tune out, trying to stay in the moment. Get those workouts where you're like next level, like you're in a tunnel vision, like you're running or whatever. I was totally there, and something came over me and said, this is exactly what you needed to separate yourself, to undeniably get to the top of this industry and put people over profit, right? Like this industry has deserved for such a long time. And nobody, I mean, you can see, I don't need to talk about other companies, but if anybody knows the fitness industry right now, today, it's the exact opposite. And something came over me. You want to call it universe, you want to call it a emotion or a tingle or God or whatever you'd like to call it. It was that godly sense of like this. I had no free will to think this thought. It just came over me. And that's now I'm better. Now it's over, because this is the exact thing that we need to get to the level that we know we were going to be at. We didn't know that we needed a pandemic, but going back to your comment, you said you learned how to take your worst day and make it your best day. And I think in that moment was the time when Morgan and I were both tested. The question around our brand was, are you recession proof? My answer is like, no. I'll do you one better. We're pandemic proof.
Yeah.
We grew 12.5% during the pandemic. Our next competitor was negative 22%. And it's because we were able to show up for our members. Our members are the most incredible, like super fans of this culture and this organization. They all kept their memberships. I mean, we had a decline, but it was not nearly as significant as other companies out there. And we had members lining up to pay for memberships. We had members lining up for people that lost their jobs, doing baby showers, celebrating birthdays with, they would literally do car parades, right, to celebrate somebody's birthday and drop off a gift. We went live in our broadcast studio. We were filming live workouts to 50,000 people, and we just met everybody where they are. We said, no matter what, we're all going through this crazy stuff. We are not going to leave you behind. You make us. And so we fall in love with our members, not our business. If we fell in love with our business, we would need doors open to be happy. When we pivoted because we were in love with our members and we cared about them, we were just as happy. It was just the new normal. And so that really gave me even more confidence in the way that I saw myself handle it, and Morgan and the rest of our organization handle it against, as I look around, other people and some of the outcomes and the way that they handled it. So definitely dominated the pandemic.
I'll tell you, obviously it's a rare instance, especially in your industry, to have that level of success or any success at all during the worst time in in owning gym businesses probably ever, right? That's remarkable. I think what's even more remarkable is just the pure positivity that I think you exude, and that will obviously carry over to your business, and why that you've been able to be successful and grow at a time when your competition was not. It's a testament to, I think, you as a person. It's remarkable to me. I have not experienced any level of the trials, the trauma, or any of the instances that you had growing up, and I have this reoccurring sort of trope where I steal from these conversations every time I have them, because to me, when you get an opportunity to have a discussion with a person you never met before, learn about their life, learn about how they overcome obstacles, it's a huge inspiration to me. And to be able to just have you tell me all of the shit that you dealt with from a young age, and how you were able to manipulate that into the necessary fuel to be the success that you are today, it just goes out to show you that, like, even in those reset moments of your life, the ability to be successful is still out there. And I commend you for that, and I commend Morgan for that as well. I mean, it's just a testament to who you guys are. It's fucking amazing. It really is.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate that. Yeah, no, it's definitely intentional and
it's just impressive. I mean, to be honest with you, it's like you go into conversations with people and you expect to hear, I work my ass off and I get up early and I put the right pieces in place. But to be able to take all of the negativity that you've experienced throughout the, formative years of your life, and then, failure, or, retirement, whatever you want to call it, and then be able to take another step forward. And then you look at the pandemic and how that could just be an absolute death blow to the industry that you're in, and be able to take that and have it be an additional fuel to grow and to be just an incredible business person. It's an impressive feat, and something that I am wildly inspired by. I think it's not the norm, and that level of attitude and mental clarity is something to be obviously inspired by.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I think, it really stemmed from me stem from me being lost, right? If you can probably conclude from my story that I didn't have a lot of positive role models in my life growing up, especially from a male side of the house. My uncles kind of followed suit with my father. And so I was in that. I so desperately sought after wisdom, and for me, the first time that I heard Tony Robbins talk about adversity as your advantage, pain versus pleasure, that really gave me the words and the language that I needed to put it into perspective. And I was gullible because I was unconditioned at the time. And one of the first things I ever heard, and I think it was his personal power tape way back in the day, dude, like as a kid.
The 90s. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that, well, two things. One, when you have no resources, get resourceful. That was number one. I carry that with me every day, because that just basically saying there's no excuses. You can always figure it out. There's always a way to get it done. But then also how he talks about pain versus pleasure, and just people like me have a built-in fabric of pain, right? And the way that you're describing, yourself, there's so many pros to that, right? But there's also a con to that, is you have an experience. You didn't have that naturally built-in pain. You weren't forced to be drugged through the mud. And so for you've got to drag yourself through the mud in some way. You've got to manufacture this pain, because that's the motivation, right? Between how we do things and why we do things and why we don't do things. We do things because we're getting away from pain toward pleasure, right? We don't do things because we're getting away from pain toward pleasure. And so when you've experienced that pain and it's super real, now you've got something to look back at, right? And say, oh shit, I'm not running from that thing, right? And then most people just leave it at, oh, you got something you're running to. Okay, that should be sufficiently motivational. It's not. You got to have both. But the last thing that I'll say on that is pain. When I say the word manufacture, the pain that I feel can be the same pain that you can manufacture. It's just how real is it to you? Getting let go from your job or something like that might translate into your head of like, I'm never going to let somebody get rid of me again. That's never going to happen, right? Like I'm going to add so much value to this world. I'm going to be so good that they can't ignore me. And I'm going to go out here and I'm going to crush this. And not that it's a revenge mindset. You're not trying to prove somebody wrong who let you go, but you're trying to prove the people right who believed in you all along. And so
I took that. Yeah. I mean, I took that lesson to heart. When I was told you're gone, it's a you thing, right? You have two decisions. It's either hamster wheel, I got to go back to it, or I was like, nah, fuck this. I'm my own boss from here on out. I'm doing what I want with my life, and there's nobody who's going to be able to say you're fired ever again, right? Like this is my journey now, and I'm the one who's in charge. I'm the captain now, right? I think you also said something that's super important. The repeatedly, so for the last 3 years, I've been building this podcast. I've been building my photography business, and I have been exceeding my expectations wildly. In the last week, I've shot a Victoria's Secret fashion show. I shot a huge inspiration for me. A group of guys, Bob Moses, who's a DJ, and amazing artist that I shot this weekend at a music festival. And these are things that I would have dreamt about 3 years ago. They were like my highlight reel possibilities in this career that I'm building for myself. And if I had the pleasure outcome of, well, this is the pinnacle, this is where I'm going to be, I would just stop right now and be like, okay, I did it, I'm done. Now what do I do? But this is just like step 2, right? You have to like think of it in that mentality, like you mentioned, because there's so much more shit that I want to do. There's so much more growth that I can do. There's so many more opportunities that I want to chase down. And if your mindset isn't that this is just another step up the ladder, you're going to be complacent, you're going to stop, and you're not going to keep driving. And I think just over time, like, I think age plays a big part in it as well. Like I'm supremely comfortable in my own skin. That happened a lot later in my 30s because I just know who I am. And I think when you have the mindset of this is what I'm doing and this is my path and I'm leading it in the right way and what I want to be doing, the successes will inevitably follow.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that's the mentality that I hope everyone picks up from this. That's right. Success breeds ambition, and just get a little momentum. You get a little momentum that's going to make you hungry for more. And it's this virtuous cycle. Could also be a vicious cycle. but it's a
Yeah.
virtuous cycle. If you believe in yourself, execute against the belief, reinforce the belief that you had in yourself, and repeat, right? And unfortunately, and what you and I aspire to do is to help other people make it a virtuous cycle and not a vicious cycle where they don't
Yeah.
believe in themselves, they don't execute, and then they say, hey, told you it wasn't going to work, right?
Yeah. I think what's beautiful is that you're taking people who maybe not believe in themselves in a physical way or even a mental way, and able to enact real change in both their physical and mental outbeings and their confidence and their ability to live a healthy mentally and physical life. And in some ways, my reasoning for this podcast is just to tell people that you can do whatever the fuck you want to do with your life as long as you put in the work. And I think there's a lot of what you've done in your life that sort of matches up with that same ethos, that there are no limitations to what we're able to accomplish as long as you're willing to put in the work. Try and fail and try and fail, and inevitably you're going to succeed.
Well, even as an entrepreneur and as a businessman, I still like recommend to people in this space, work out every day. Work out every day because that's the hard shit that nobody wants to do. And if you do that, you're a step ahead of someone every day. You have an anchor for your day. You can control it no matter what happens in your life. You can wake up and work out. It's going to create discipline, and you're going to start building confidence by keeping the promises that you make to yourself. And that's ultimately what we're doing, right? This is fitness for me is like the it's like the bonfire that we're all sitting around, right? It's not the goal. It is the goal is to have a gathering place where people come and then can learn confidence, right? If you go back to my story, fitness taught me confidence because it allowed me to gain 25 pounds. It allowed me to get to the next level. It was the catalyst for my entire life and where I'm at today. And it can, and now, most people like think about fitness as like do some push-ups and that's annoying and I don't want to do that and it's painful, but I'll do it anyway because my doctor tells me I have to. It's like, no, like this is the tool that you can control even when it's raining outside. You can control this tool, right? You can do it. It's free. Just go run. You don't have to pay a gym. You could just go run, right? You can do push-ups. Those are free. You know how to do this. YouTube has like millions of workouts, right? This is the thing that creates confidence. Our business has grown so big so fast is because we're not a fitness company. We're a marketing company whose product is confidence. And there's a fundamental difference between that mindset and then selling memberships and selling fitness, right? Because then it stops at fitness. The reason our culture and community has raving fans is because that's just the invitation.
Yeah.
It's just the invitation. And then once you get around that bonfire and you get around that camp and the energy and the trainers and the community, it's like, man, these people are having a very sophisticated conversation around this bonfire. Ooh, maybe I want to be a part of this sophisticated conversation because I'm learning something about myself every time I come to the gym. Every time I get a chance to meet with these people, I'm becoming more confident. So confidence is a skill. So if you the Wrong Advice podcast, it's like, don't ever let anybody tell you that confidence isn't a skill, that you can't get more confident, that you can't manufacture more confidence, that confidence is something that is a catalyst to your life and can propel you to heights that you never thought of. Because who the hell's going to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself?
Absolutely nobody. And I think you touched on something that's very important. The businesses that are going to be successful post-pandemic are the ones that foster and build community. And it's no wonder that you're successful in doing this. You're a fucking light, man. I mean, I'm inspired by you. I may even go to the gym today. That's probably a lie.
You about to
But
run through the wall?
yeah, I'm about to run through a wall, man. I mean, truly, I am wicked inspired by this conversation. And I've got like that cliche thing. I steal like an artist, right? Like, and from this conversation, I'm stealing inspiration to go be, go do movement today. Go out and feel better about myself if I'm feeling shitty and I'm feeling lethargic. You make me want to go run through a fucking wall, and I think that's a testament to you. Yeah, I'm so wildly appreciative that you took the time out of your day to come on the podcast and talk about life with me. I've got a really cliche line. If you've been on my podcast, you're part of my family. So welcome. And yeah, man, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks, John. And I'll throw the light in the world ball right back in your court. Thanks for doing what you're doing, inspiring people. We need more and more and more entrepreneurial media to really shine the positive light and the world changing light on this industry that often, and this profession that often gets a bad rap. But you've never seen a Disney movie where the CEO is the hero. So
Yeah,
I appreciate you being the champion of us entrepreneurs out there, because I think the soul of every entrepreneur is a pure soul. Maybe sometimes we get the wrong path, but the pure intent is to help change the world, make the world a better place. And you're helping people stay in the path. So thank you as well.
Oh, my pleasure, man. It's been a real treat, and you have a great rest of your day.
All right.